too small, I got big dreams.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Pun Fun, where we have fun with the puns. My name is Ryan. We're gonna check out Moon Knight. So Moon Knight has been crazy. It's been insane. People have been blowing up our Instagram, Facebook, and what you have it. And they're like, hey man, what is up with that Moon Man? So we're not talking about the MTV guy. We're not talking about the Sailor Moon, Moon Knight. Although that would be cool if, they have the multiverse open up and you actually have Moon Knight show up with, in the name of the moon, I will punish you. But that is not the case. What is important and what we need to understand is who is Moon Knight? How does he fit into the MCU? What are his powers? Is he stronger than certain, Avengers? Will he be an Avenger? I mean, that is the question. And there's other groups than just the Avengers. And there's the Young Avengers, there's the Old Avengers, there's the Avengers 2099. But there are other groups that have been formed. I mean, even for example, the Defenders. Who I'll get straight into it. There's actually three groups I want to talk about. So one of them is the Defenders. So you have, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and you have all these, beautiful entities that belonged to Netflix, which we now know may not be the case, seeing that we did see Daredevil somewheres, which I may not spoiled already for you guys. Sorry. And that being said, Moon Knight actually does join the Defenders, in this case also with Doctor Strange. It would make sense seeing that these properties are now, seeping into the MCU. We've seen it with Kingpin, we've seen it with Daredevil. Who else will come through and maybe get the gang together and get the Defenders up and running? So, that being said, we're gonna, put these groups and all that, jazz aside. Let's get straight into the Moon Man himself. So, who is Moon Knight? Ow. So, who is Moon Knight? I mean, obviously, it's that dude you see on the thumbnail. By the way, that art was done by the one and only Marco Rudy. And, we had an amazing interview with him in our previous episode. So if you're into interviews, especially with the artists that create the art for, all these comic books and crazy beings, you definitely want to check it out and, hit a like and subscribe. But definitely just, take a moment to understand the kind of art process that goes through all this, but also the kind of projects they have coming up for, Marvel and DC. They have their own projects too, so you want to go check it out. Marco Rudy, it's on our last episode. Anyways, great interview. Let's get back into this one. So he has two other beings, or two other personas, renting out the space within his head, which is Stephen Grant, and you also have Jake Lockley. So Stephen Grant, the name says it itself, Grant, he is super wealthy. He is a millionaire. I guess that, the time when these comics were written, that actually meant something. He was able to infiltrate, the high society stuff. So, for example, in the Hawkeye series, I mean, them cocktail parties were more than just some cocktails, right? There was some crazy stash that was being, sold or auctioned off. And, a lot of it is not necessarily clean or legal. So, that all being said, that's where he gets to infiltrate the high-level stuff. And, there is quite a lot of crime, within there, and everybody kind of knows who he is. Again, he's able to go through so many things, and you would think people would pick up on who he is, but he's kind of a master of disguise to some degree. And then you also have Jake Lockley. So Jake Lockley is a cab driver in comic books, of course. I'm not sure, we haven't seen any of that within the trailer. We do see him drive that delivery truck, which I don't think that's the same case. He was getting away from something or a group. Anyways, why he infiltrates or disguises himself as a cab driver, he's able to actually hear or listen to the streets via the people coming in and out, and gaining trust within that community, within the streets itself. So very cool. He's able to understand that there's a high society, low society, and how to infiltrate all this. He doesn't have some guy with a bunch of cell phones with a big ass screen and he's like, oh yeah, look, they're talking about this and that and that. No, that's where he kind of differentiates a bit from Batman. And there's other aspects, and we'll get into that in a couple seconds. So that all being said, there's also Moon Knight. So Moon Knight is the fourth or third being that lives within his head. Now he is Moon Knight, so he transforms. So you see the mummy dressing, if you will, and then the cape and the cloak and the hoodies and all that jazz. But what happens is that it is also another being that's living within his head, so kind of using him as an avatar while they walk on Earth, and that is a Khonshu. So Khonshu is the god of the moon, and of vengeance. I mean, of all things, vengeance. I don't know how they did this, just vengeance. Yeah, I think it's better with this. Anyways, I'm rambling on. Let's get back into it. So That being said, that is the creature that we see in the trailer that's following him around, the person with the bird nose and the floating head and the mummy appendages and all that. It's first of all, I'm so happy that we're getting into this whole the Egypt, the mummies, the pyramids, and I was a big fan of, like, for example, Mummy Alive and even the Scorpion King, not so much, but the whole aspect and lore of the gods, and all of that was just something very magical, and that's why I'm gonna love this series, I think, as much as any other series. And I'm not biased because Marvel is everything, but that's kind of what's gonna happen here. He's gonna exhibit the past spirits, in this case of Khonshu, which is the god himself of the moon, and transform. So that being said, yes, I mean, Marc Spector himself is a military man. He was a boxer, a champion for that matter. He knows tactics. He knows how to use a grappling hook. He knows how to throw ninja stars, or in this case crescent darts. And he's even able to carve these crescent moons in people's head, kind of like a la Jigsaw, if you will, which I guess is kind of going off the edge. I don't think they're going to show that in the Disney Plus series. I mean, if they would, that is getting into dark waters, or dark territories, if you will. But I mean, it'd be so fitting and welcoming to have something like that, especially if you bring in somebody like Deadpool later on. Anyways, we'll leave Deadpool aside for now. Kick him off. So how does he actually get the powers? Is he was as I said, a military man with high level skills, tactical skills, and all that jazz, and kind of like a Tomb Raider, if you will. Yeah, instead of Tomb Raider, Tomb Raider. Anyways, he was basically left for dead by the person that hired him, which was Bushman. So Bushman is very important because he comes back later on, and there's going to be this crazy duality between him and Batman. If we get more in depth with this, so Bushman leaves him for dead. Basically, he's on his last breath, and these kind of keepers of the god or the temple, if you will, actually do find him, and their worshippers and their followers. Speaking of followers, you can always hit that subscribe button. This way, every time we come up with something cool, you're on top of everything. Anyways, let's get back to our goats, as the French expression goes. So he gets taken back to Khonshu. Khonshu says, "Hey man, I'm gonna let you live again, but we're gonna bargain. We're gonna make a strike a deal, kind of like if you were to strike a deal with the devil. No, there's no Mephisto confirmed. Although this would be a good place to insert him. He is granted the powers of Khonshu, so Khonshu, now lives within him. This is why it's gonna be important. This is also why Internals was very important. So we saw the Internals. We saw that there were deviants. We saw that once they were able to absorb certain characters, they were able to now have those abilities and powers. Now the deviants are creatures that exist for eons and eons ago, just as much as the Celestials and whatever, the good guys and the bad guys. For example, just like Catan. So Catan, the reason why I think this is going to be very important is that he may actually be possessing or exhibiting through the book, which is a conjurant, to the Scarlet Witch, who is now exhibiting the powers of Catan. It does happen in the comic book as well. She does go full Catan, and she has this crazy level of chaos power or chaos magic. Now, that is exactly what's happening here. So it's not necessarily through the Darkhold. I mean, it could be, but what we do know is that through the powers of Ra, through the powers of Khonshu, he gets the powers, becomes the Dark Knight. No, he doesn't become Dark Knight. He becomes the Moon Knight. Wow, what a slip up. And he basically, goes on, carries out his vengeance. And I've been rambling. Now, the important part about all of this is that he is, or maybe, going to be a part of the Midnight Suns. So the Midnight Suns is not like, the sun at midnight. It is the sun. So it's like the little boy band that, the MCU wish it had. And it's basically, going to be doing this little, jig, with their white outfit. Oh, Moon Knight's already in white. Anyways, so the OG boy band is actually all of these creatures and beings that so for example, you have Blade, you got maybe some Morbius or Dracula. I don't know if they'll show Dracula, so it might just be Morbius. I don't know if Sony or Marvel is gonna love the fact that it's a Sony character that's gonna be so involved in a group or a team up, so maybe not. But we will have Ghost Rider. So we've seen Ghost Rider already within the Netflix series. it'd be cool if they bring him back, or if they were to reprise him. I mean, it was a great rendition. I don't think they're gonna go with the Nicolas Cage version. I mean, if they do, it is what it is. However, having Ghost Rider right now would be amazing. I think that, for the CG and everything, where it's at, they can't go wrong, and especially with the hands of the Marvel Studios, behind it, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. You also have who else do you have within? Oh, you have Doctor Strange, of course. So again, it's gonna be this group that kind of already exists. The Punisher, yeah. I mean, it would be a great way to introduce these Netflix characters, and even if they bring in some mutants as well, I'm all for it. Gathered or assembled because of Moon Knight, down the road. I think that's where it's gonna go, because the Phase 5, rather you like it or not, is going to probably be more mythical. So it's going to be about, Pip the Troll, which we've seen at the end of Eternals. We're also going to see maybe more mystical, like werewolves. We're going to see vampires, more in that realm for the 5th phase, because why not? I mean, it's not overplayed. This is what Marvel was kind of growing up with a lot of monsters and creatures and stuff that spooked, the kids, and what that went bump in the night. We're getting way off track. What does matter is that we see him tied up in the bed. So basically, kind of like Oz, if you will, from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where they tie him up and you're like, don't worry. Or even, I think Harry Potter, they're like, hey, you need to get tied up before the moon, is full out and about, and you're going to, cause chaos and kill people. So, that all being said, I know he's not a werewolf, and I hope he doesn't become a werewolf. That he's not supposed to be a werewolf. But we're going to go full circle, and I'll tell you how and exactly when and how. Anyways, later in the trailer, we do see that there are boxes behind him that says Von D, and you're like, Von Doom, and you're like, oh my god, is that one of the companies that he invested in while he was Grant? But no, in the end, it's the truck, the ice cream truck, or pastry truck, if you will. But, I mean, that can also be a cover, right? That can also be, maybe that's what Von Doom started off with, selling cupcakes. And then he was like, screw the cupcake world. I want to, conquer, the rest, like the actual world and the multiverse. And I don't know why it kind of sounded like Mr. Monopoly there for a second. But anyways, I'm rambling way too much. Let's continue this train on. We're going. So, now that we're talking about, Von Doom, I mean, that would definitely be, another man in cape, another man in, hoodie. We do to talk about the Fantastic Four, and we hope to see him down the road. I think it's a little too early, and it's kind of, it could be just an Easter egg, if anything, just to get us, talking like the way I am right now. This all being said, we are going to go back in time, so we are going to see, the ancient Egyptian time, where Khonshu, lived and breathed, or, exhibited A, B, and Z, and maybe in this case, we're also going to see Rama-Tut. So, Rama-Tut, if, you guys aren't aware, is Kang. So, Kang's earlier rendition. So, Kang has lived through time, and he's been, a king or an emperor or a conqueror from ever since. And in this case, he was a pharaoh, which was Rama-Tut. I think that'd be cool. If not, hear me out. A great Easter egg would be to see, like, at the exhibit, a Rama-Tut, Easter egg of some sort. That would be cool. That would be, everything. I don't even need to see him. I just need to know, like, someone's like, oh, hey, did you see the new Rama-Tut museum? Done. Great. Scene. I mean, beautiful. But yeah, so as we carry on, we also see him, there's obviously a villain, because, everyone's kind of worshipping him, kind of got to do with the Loki, and he kind of guarantees that he can numb the pain. So maybe in this case, Marc Spector is looking a way to numb this pain or get away from, insomnia. Maybe he doesn't know that there's, those pens that people are shooting up, or, maybe meditation, or, exercise, or whatever it is you do to get sleeping. Anyways, we're not going to get into that. What you need to know is that at the very end of this trailer, you see him transform. It is great. We do see Khonshu, running after his ass, and then basically gives him the powers and says, hey, get on with the vengeance. Now, we do see at the very end, there's this creature. It kind of looks like a werewolf. I mean, it has the head of a dog and these long legs. So, kind of like Nubis. So, the Egyptian god Nubis. But what's important is, because we're talking about werewolves, maybe these were the werewolves of those times, so hey, full circle. So there you have it, guys. We talked about, who he is. He's going to be this character that's going to, seek vengeance on his own. He does team up with, the Avengers at some point. He does at some point thinks that he's with Spider-Man and Wolverine and Captain America, but it's actually all in his mind. So that's just how powerful his, mind plays on him. He even thinks that sometimes there are beings that he's fighting that is actually there. So even when he saw Spider-Man fighting something, was actually like nothing there. And there are times where, he's fighting for the wrong reasons, which is why this committee, as we mentioned, doesn't really have his best intentions. So this is where we're coming back, full circle with Batman. So Batman, besides, the fact that he does grappling hook and he's, the guy with the vengeance and all that too, his enemy actually has this like white paint face, kind of like the Joker, if you will. Not, obviously similar in physique, but I mean, he did create him, and in the same way, in the opposite way, Moon Knight kind of creates him. So again, a lot of duality. Hopefully this shines through the MCU, unless they want to play it clean and try to disassociate themselves from the Batman series as much as they could. I mean, the trailer having them, punch and beat him out. Remember, he was a boxer, so I can imagine how those blows were. Now, lastly, and this is where we're going to tie it all up. So we mentioned that he can actually fight an Avenger or take down an Avenger. Like, for example, Thor. I mean, so it's not the fact that his powers can overtake Thor. It's just that, for example, Mjolnir is actually made from Uru. And Uru, if you're not familiar with it, it is made from moon rocks, I guess, or moon particles or moon material. Who controls moon material? Well, I mean, Aperture Science does. But other than them, you also have Moon Knight. So Moon Knight is able to control Mjolnir. Doesn't mean that he's worthy. So that's something you need to understand. So, the spell says he's worthy. He can actually just control that material itself. And then, obviously utilize it and use it as he will. And he can also unweaponize or disable Thor, if you will. Because also his armor is made of that same Uru. So that is to keep in mind, and maybe we'll see that later on in MCU, or maybe he'll have that same, Captain America, like, and everyone's gonna be like, ah! No, it's not because he's worthy. It's because he can actually control the material, which I'm kind of surprised it really didn't go into details of what it's made of. But, I mean, if it's a nice, teaser or spoiler later on down the road, definitely you want to keep that in mind. So, that being said, this series comes out March 30th. We're super excited. Let us know in the comments below, what do you think of Moon Knight? What are your first impressions? Will you see it? Will you check it out? I mean, I hope you do, because we're gonna have a breakdown for every single episode, as we usually do for every single Disney Plus series in the Marvel universe. So I'm hoping that I've enlightened you just a bit more, shine some of that moonlight on who is Moon Knight. And yeah, I mean, as always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you want to follow us for whichever reason, we highly suggest you hit that subscribe button. This way you stay on top every time and any time we put out a video, and also show us back some love. Take it easy, guys. Peace.